What's going on, everybody? It's Jeff Iafrate from Crunch Time here with my final 2024 Detroit Lions NFL mock draft. It's 4.0 time. I did 3.0 last week, or I think 2 weeks ago. Regardless, I traded up in that mock draft. Today, I'm not doing any trades. You can also argue Brad Holmes could trade back. Trading back is definitely on the table of possibilities. Nothing is off the table, to be fair, with Brad Holmes. But today, I'm not doing trades. I'm staying put with a Lions select, and I'm taking my best players. I've kind of narrowed it down over the last couple of weeks doing these mock drafts to my final kind of my best options for the Detroit Lions. And you guys have shown a lot of support. So again, I thank you for that. Also, subscribe if you haven't already. I know we're getting some new viewers. About 50% of the people who watch the content are not subscribed. So please hit the subscribe button, like the video because it pushes content like this out in the algorithm, and turn on the notification bell so you're alerted every time we post. You can also become a Crunch member and you get access to different emotes. So if you're supporting the channel, thank you. And if you're watching the video, that's supporting within itself. So thank you for that. Now let's get started. At pick 29, again, I didn't do any trades. These are my best players. We're going to start with my favorite corner, besides the top corners, right? Quinyon Mitchell, I think, is the best corner. But at pick 29, I think this is the best option for the Detroit Lions, and I'll explain why. That's cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. Yes, you've seen an appearance by Kool-Aid McKinstry in a prior Detroit Lions mock draft of mine, and I absolutely love this player. I do. I mean, I've mentioned it before, and I've spoke a lot about what I like about Kool-Aid McKinstry, but I'll kind of reiterate myself and add something that I haven't added yet, and I'll get to that. But I'll start. High football IQ. Like I've said before, if you're starting in Saban's defense as a freshman, you have to have some sort of high football IQ. Brian Branch did it. Look at the player he is. And athletically, Brian Branch, in terms of his RAS score, is not a he was never a common selection by Brad Holmes. Usually Brad does value that RAS score, but sometimes with his secondary players, when Brad Holmes is selecting one, you got to look at intangibles. You got to look at football IQ. You got to look at how they play. You watch the tape. And that's what matters, right? Like Brian Branch didn't have a high RAS score, but he's a hell of a player. So Brad Holmes is like, I got to get this guy. And look at the progress he's made already through his first year. I think Brian Branch has all pro talent. And I think Kool-Aid, athletically, 4.5 speed. I think he ran a 4.5 with a banged up foot, and we'll see. He had surgery on that foot. He's going to be one of your best corners as a rookie, and he's only going to get better. I think he could challenge right away Amik Robertson for CB2, and I think eventually he can be CB1 for you. And at pick 29, you get a fifth-year option. I mean, look at the receivers in your division, guys. You need cornerbacks, and you need guys that thrive in man coverage, which Kool-Aid does. He's elite in press man coverage. And he played really well against LSU, which I'll tell you one thing right now, which I haven't mentioned before. LSU wide receivers, Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, they called Kool-Aid McKinstry the best cornerback in college football. They said he's the best cornerback they've went against. It's a pretty significant statement from two of the better wide receivers in this class. Malik Neighbors certainly wide receiver too, and Brian Thomas will be a first-round pick. So talk about a stamp of approval. Kool-Aid McKinstry, a competitor, and someone I think the Lions are going to be very, very happy with if they select him. Now let's go to 61. This is where I have the Lions selecting edge, and you've seen this player before, and that's Adisa Isaac. I absolutely love Adisa Isaac. He played at Penn State. He was their most productive edge rusher. He plays violent, which I think the Lions are going to absolutely love. Great hand placement. He's big, 6'4", 6'5", 260. I mean, he had 7.5 sacks. And maybe athletically, he doesn't check all the boxes. Chop Robinson, RAS score, super athletic. He had almost double the sacks as Chop Robinson. So I look at production when it comes to that also. And you look at run defense, which Adisa Isaac unquestionably is a better run defender than Chop Robinson. So you're getting someone at 61 that can defend the run, can rush the passer. I think he's got the intangibles with Terrell Williams, new defensive line coach for the Lions, to develop into a hell of a player. I like this selection. And if you're not taking one in the first round, an edge, trading up to get one, I think at 61, you take Adisa Isaac. That's great value. Not a huge fan of Marshawn Nealon, and I'm not a huge fan in general of the edge depth in this class. So it's risky to take a corner in round one, even though I prefer they trade up. But then you're sitting there going, we got to get it. We got to get an edge quickly. And I think at 61, you get Adisa Isaac. I'm a happy man. So I think this is a great selection for the Lions at 61, even if you have to trade up a couple spots to get him. But we'll see. He could be there, certainly. Let's get to 73. Again, this is pretty familiar. The first three picks, you guys are going to recognize it. It gets a little different as the draft goes on. But these are like my first three. We'll be four in a second because you've seen the next player. But my first three preferred draft picks. Brennan Rice at 73. The route running jumps off the charts. You watch Brennan Rice, the size, the speed, the route running. Obviously, you look at the heritage, right? He's Jerry Rice's son, but more than that, he's a hell of a player. I mean, he was Caleb Williams' favorite red zone target. Red zone target. And he's a hell of a run blocker, which something about those USC wide receivers. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown, hell of a run blocker. Brennan Rice will be and is one hell of a run blocker. And you look at, like I said, the red zone threat, the speed, the size, the route running, the run blocking. He checks every box for a wide receiver. And I've said this before, I don't prefer the Lions to take a wide receiver in the first round because of the depth in this class. I certainly believe that at 73, if you get a guy like Brennan Rice, you're still walking away with a really good player. You don't have to take one at 29. You don't have to take one at 61. You can take a guy at 73 and still have a really, really good player. So this is where I took a wide receiver because after this pick, you don't pick again until 164. So you have to end up with a wide receiver at some point. And I took two defensive players as my first two picks. To me, this is the spot for a wide receiver. Because my next selection at 164, now I start to address offensive line, and you've seen this player before, and that's offensive guard Zach Zinner from Michigan. The only reason why you're getting a player like this is because of the injury, and I don't even know if he'll be here. But this is a guy that I think you just have to find a way to get for the value. He's going to fall. I think he'll fall out of the top 100, and you trade up and get a Zach Zinner. You're getting a starting guard when he gets fully healthy. And after Kevin Zeitler departs, which he signed a short-term deal for a reason. You need someone to develop and take that role. I know they drafted Colby Sorsdahl, but still, you got Graham Glasgow, who's not getting any younger either. So I know he signed a little longer of a deal. But for Kevin Zeitler, you need some depth at guard. And I think Zach Zinner at 164 is a home run selection. He's a really good run blocker, which the Lions love to run the ball. Michigan love to run the ball. He's a good scheme fit. I think he's got upside as a pass protector as well. Played every snap at right guard for Michigan. And I think he'll be a really, really good right guard for this current offensive line, which, again, you're playing with Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker. You just find your role. And I think Zach Zinner will be able to do that. Again, playing on, I know they didn't win the award for the best offensive line in football, in college football, but I think Michigan, that offensive line was elite. And Zach Zinner was the heart and soul of that offensive line. So it'd be a great selection for the Detroit Lions at 164. And at 201, I have Christian Boyd, Northern Iowa's finest defensive lineman, going to the Detroit Lions. This is a player that has met with the Detroit Lions already. He showed out at the East-West Shrine Bowl. And if you guys have been paying attention to Lions media, he did a top 30 visit after standing out at the East-West Shrine Bowl. He dominated one-on-ones. And here's a fun fact about Christian Boyd. He is PFF's highest graded run defender in this year's class since 2022 at 92.1. And he's the sixth best pass rusher, highest graded pass rusher since 2022, 83.1. So he's PFF's highest graded run defender since 2022, according to PFF, like I said. And he's PFF's sixth best pass rusher. Sure, getting a guy who can, again, do both. And he dominated one-on-ones at the East-West Shrine Bowl. And he showed out, which that's what made teams even more intrigued about Christian Boyd. I think the Lions are going to prioritize defensive line. I do. And you could argue, well, Jeff, they have Broderick Martin. You need competition. And I think Christian Boyd is a guy that I'm comfortable giving Broderick Martin a run for his money. He's not as big, right? I think Broderick's like 6'5", Christian's like 6'3", but again, he could do both. He could rush the passer. He can stop the run. And I think the Lions, they've already met with him. This is something the Lions do. They meet with certain players, and then later in the draft, if they're still there, they're familiar. They like the potential, right? With the right development, I think Christian Boyd could be a starter. I do. I like him a lot. And at 201, you're getting great value here, even for an FCS player, which, Brad Holmes, Broderick Martin, Colby Sorsdahl, he's not afraid to take guys from colleges where you're thinking, who? And I think at Northern Iowa, Christian Boyd would be a great selection for the Detroit Lions. I have them addressing kicker at 205. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky because Joshua Carty is my selection. Is he my unquestioned favorite kicker? Not sure, to be honest with you. I got a couple kickers I'm okay with: Cam Little, Will Reichert, Joshua Carty. Joshua Carty, he's gotten better from 50 plus. He even hit I believe a 61-yarder in 2022, and he's missed one extra point in his career. So there's a lot of things to like about Joshua Carty, but he was like 1 for 5 from 50 plus his freshman year. So there's things that kind of scare you. I'll just say this: at 205, it better be a kicker. So if that sounds a lot better, Cam Little, Will Reichert, I really don't care. Just address kicker. I've had a kicker in every mock I've done. They have to draft a kicker. You just have to. You need to give some competition to Michael Badgley. Whether it is, like I said, Carty, Reichert, Little, I don't care. So that's up to the Lions to evaluate that position. I'm not Pat McAfee. Can't evaluate kicking like he is. He can't. But I do like pretty much the top kickers in this class. I really don't care. Just get better, please, so we don't have to go for it. All right, let's move on to the next one. At pick 249, I have the Lions selecting DeJohn Anthony. And this was a kind of an interesting pick. I was super excited when I was able to select DeJohn Anthony. Again, he's a guy that could go higher, but if he's there, you take him. He's a safety, played at Ole Miss. He's a competitor, flat-out competitor. I mean, he's recovering block kicks, delivering huge hits, and he provides good safety depth, I believe, for the Detroit Lions. He can play special teams right away, and go watch his tape. He'll stand out to you, certainly. And something I thought was super interesting about him, and this is the side I'm slowly starting to pay attention to with the Detroit Lions. They value character so much. When you watch DeJohn Anthony, his interview at the Combine, and he's sitting there talking about how before every game, he reads a letter from his grandmother because she passed away. Every game he reads it. That's just, there's small things that I just pay attention to. Like, that's a character check for me. Like, he plays for something bigger than himself, which is something I think the Lions look at. What's your motivation? What makes you tick? And for DeJohn Anthony to be reading a letter from his grandmother every single game, there's a reason he goes out there and puts it all on the line. That's why he plays football. That's why he loves the sport. That's why he plays with so much passion. And that's why I really do like DeJohn Anthony. I know I just went on a random tangent there for a 7th-round pick, but it's true. Like, every pick matters. Like, that's what we have to start getting comfortable with. That with Brad Holmes, every pick matters. Like, DeJohn Anthony could be a starter in 2 years. Who knows? With how he hits on draft picks. So I love this selection. I think the Lions are going to absolutely love him too. So there's my Detroit Lions NFL Mock Draft 4.0. Please, these are my best players. Now, the Joshua Carty thing is open to interpretation depending on which kicker you like. I'm not going to sit there and argue with you, but you get the point. Draft a kicker at 205 or 249. But these are my best players. These players are who I want the Lions to select if they're able to. We'll see. Every draft plays out differently. I understand that. You'd hope Brad Holmes trades up, but if he doesn't, these are the picks. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. You love it. You hate it. I love to engage in conversation. And don't forget, we'll be live tonight, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. here on Crunch Time. I'll catch you guys next time.